is going to be right up your alley. Check it out.
I get the best of the roots under the eyes.
That is Under the Ice from Thornbridge off their latest album, What Will Prevail. And this is an album, actually, that we wanted to review about maybe 5-6 weeks ago, as it came out earlier than expected. We didn't get a chance to, and we would be really missing something if we did not listen to this album and fully give you our thoughts on it, because it's something to be heard. If you, these guys are from Germany and have a very German power metal sound to them. I was really, really impressed with this album. I will give you my thoughts here in a little bit, but I'm going to hand it off to Biv and see what he thought about Thornbridge's most recent album. Biv, what did you think?
Well, if you know me, then you know I'm into the German power metal scene. I just, that scene as a whole is right up my alley. And I thoroughly enjoyed this CD. You know, as I was listening to the lyrics, something popped into my head, and follow me on this. Now, I don't mean in any way to say that their sound is like Sabaton. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is these guys are to land warfare lyrically what Sabaton is to naval warfare.
That's a good point. And I will also say that they have a handful of choruses that are very Sabaton-esque in this
They
album.
do. They do. Now, the vocalist doesn't sound, and the style isn't super similar to Sabaton at all. So, again, I'm not trying to make that comparison musically, but lyrically, that's what popped into my head was, you know, if Sabaton decided to do an amphibious assault, they would turn into Thornbridge, you know. So, but I absolutely love the CD. What Will Prevail is probably my favorite track on the CD. But Blow Up the Gates of Hell, The Dragon's Reborn, Under the Ice, of course, which we just played. There's a lot of really good tracks on here, so I also was very impressed. These guys, you know, I'm a fan now. I have to admit, I'm a fan.
I absolutely am too, and I'll tell you what, this was an album that really, really surprised me. And if you are an old school Ed Guy fan, and I'm talking, you know, Theater of Salvation, Mandrake, maybe even Hellfire Club era Ed Guy fan like I am, this is absolutely right up your alley. You're going to be like, oh, hell yes, because this gives you that, you know, straightforward power metal, soaring vocals in some ways, sing-along choruses, very, you know, early 2000s, late 90s Ed Guy. If that's your thing, you're going to absolutely love Thornbridge. I think they do a tremendous job, incredibly talented. There's a couple tracks throughout the album that give me a very, for example, I'll mention actually some of the tracks that Biv mentioned as well. The first four, besides the intro, of course, Blow Up the Gates of Hell, The Dragon's Reborn, What Will Prevail, Coachman's Curse. That's a quattro of just really, really solid tracks. And then right after that, you have Symphony of the Battlefield, which is kind of like a 2-minute interlude. And then Eternal Life, Neverwinter Nights, and Under the Ice are also really solid too. I mean, I just mentioned 7 songs that I can say will absolutely be songs that are going to be ones I listen to time and time and time again. Eternal Life, by the way, very, if you're familiar with Theocracy, which I know you are, Biv, very Theocracy feel to Eternal Life. And Neverwinter Nights was I got a lot of Iced Earth from that, which, again, shouldn't surprise you, even though we're not in Germany here, you know, a power metal band like Iced Earth, especially the older stuff, you know, very, you know, chugga-chugga, galloping riff there on Neverwinter Nights. And I get a lot of, vocally, to your point, it's certainly not Joachim from Sabaton, and it's not, you know, Toby from Ed Guy. I kind of think it is more of like a Hansi Kirsch from Blind Guardian vibe every once in a while that I get vocally from him, which, again, not a bad thing there. Just overall an incredibly talented band that you know, again, this is, I am now a fan. I am definitely somebody who's going to be telling people, dude, you got to check out Thornbridge. For example, my brother who loves Ed Guy, old school Ed Guy, we've seen them in concert a handful of times. I'm going to play Thornbridge for him. He's like, dude, this is awesome. I just know there are certain bands and certain albums you hear where you think of your friends immediately as you hear them, or family members as you hear them. I heard this album. I thought my brother Nick's going to absolutely dig the hell out of this, and I'm sure he will. Really impressed. Close to a perfect score for me. Not quite there, but a definite 9 out of 10, hands down.
Well, I didn't quite go as high as you did, but it's still an album that is thoroughly enjoyable to me, and it's one I'll continue to listen to. And as you mentioned, there's 6 or 7 tracks on here that could easily be, and probably will be, in my rotation. I'm going to go 8 out of 10.
Okay, still solid score. Thornbridge. Check out What Will Prevail. If you're a power metal fan, or just metal fan in general, you're going to dig it. Now, let's get into the review that's been a couple of months in the making. Begrudgingly, we give you this. Or at least I do.
Gone, but not forgotten. You cut me down just to watch me bleed. Gone, but not forgotten. I gave you the last word, and that's the last thing you'll take from me.
Go ahead.
All right, that was Sleeping Dogs off of Book of Shadows 2 by Zakk Wylde. Now, as most of you know, Zakk Wylde's only other solo album, Book of Shadows, came out exactly 20 years ago in 1996, which is a favorite album of mine. I still listen to it once in a while all these years later. And so Book of Shadows 2 was one that I mentioned to you, Jason, 2 months ago. In fact, I think on our very first episode. Where I was like, dude, this is coming out and I can't wait. And I know you think Zakk's a penis. I get it. So, I don't know how fair I expected you to be. And I may surprise you with my review, but before I give you mine, I'm going to turn it over to you. Now, I know you're not a Zakk fan.
Okay.
I get it. Personally, I get it.
Okay, so let me give you and the listeners some background. We talked about this in the first episode, and let me address this really quick. This is an album that we've had in previous episodes where there's certain albums where the first album that came to mind was Anthrax, where Biv is not a big fan. I am. But we listened to it anyway and checked it out and tried to give his honest feedback. Killswitch Engage is another one. Where Biv is not a Killswitch fan, I am. We reviewed it. He gave it a shot. He listened to it. So out of respect for Biv, and I also think because as metalheads ourselves, and you have other friends and people that you know that may be into a band that you're like, dude, I'm a metalhead too, but how do you like this? And vice versa, that happens a lot. That happens with me and Biv. That happens with a lot of you and a lot of your friends as well. So similar here when we're talking about Book of Shadows 2. Not a Zakk Wylde fan, not a Black Label Society fan. Now, with that said, I want to give quick background as to why I'm trying to be objective here, but it's going to be hard, and I want to explain why it's going to be hard for me to be objective. 2 things. One, to me, he's one of the bigger heavy metal divas that's out there, and I don't like that and never will. And if you have any questions about that, just simply YouTube Zakk Wylde, and you're going to see all types of just diva-like crap. 2, the guy praises Ozzy Osbourne in front of him, kisses his rear end in front of him, but then talks crap behind his back a lot, and there's documentation of that all the time. On top of that, one of the reasons why I immediately don't like Zakk Wylde, and I will admit, maybe because I'm an Iron Maiden fanboy, is when Iron Maiden was part of Ozfest, and they were on before Sabbath, towards the end of the tour, in which they kept trying to cut Maiden's set list short so that Sabbath could take the stage earlier. Maiden wasn't really happy about that. Sharon Osbourne, being the bitch that she is, behind the scenes, did a lot of things in regards to you're trying to get other bands, and this is proved, this is out there, of trying to throw eggs at Iron Maiden. There were times where Zakk Wylde took the microphone and started going, Ozzy, Ozzy, like 5 minutes before the end of Maiden's set, because he's a jerk-off. So, with that said, I automatically don't like Zakk Wylde for those reasons alone. On top of that, I think Black Label Society is a boring-ass overrated band. There, I said it. Now that I got that off my chest and I got that out of the way, let's talk about Book of Shadows 1 and 2. I never listened to Book of Shadows 1 because I had no desire to do so, just like many of you may have not listened to John Tesh's most recent album because you probably don't care, just like I didn't either. With that said, I went back to listen to Book of Shadows 1 and tried to be as objective as possible, and to me, I found it kind of boring. I was expecting a metal CD of some sort, of a very good guitarist in Zakk Wylde.
I told you not to.
Huh?
I told you not to. I told you when you and I talked about this 2 months ago, and you kept saying Black Label Society, and I tried to tell you then that his solo work is nothing like Black Label Society. And you said, how can that be? He's the founding member of Black Label Society, and this is his solo stuff. So how could they be that different?
But that doesn't
and
mean
they are.
But it doesn't mean it has to be a boring acoustic blob of crap, which is what it was. Now, that's the first album. Now, I will say this. So I listened to Book of Shadows 2. I listened to the first song. I hear Autumn Changes. It may as well be. I within 20 seconds of the song, I just want to go, oh, sheets of empty canvas, because it may as well be Black from Pearl Jam. It was just, I'm like, what the hell is this? Now, the rest of the album, to me, is similar. Sleeping Dogs, which is the song we just played, and the first single off of the album, was nothing special to me as well. The only thing I get from this album, which is a damn shame, is Zakk Wylde's absolute talent on the guitar. Some of his solos, and for example, two songs that really stand out to me. One song I actually did like pretty considerably on this album is Lost Prayer. The fourth track, which I think is a good song. And the solo on Darkest Hour is one of the coolest solos I've heard in a long, long time. And when you hear his solo work, the dude shreds. Even on this album, he's incredibly talented. I'm not taking that away from him. I think he's overrated, but I'm thinking he's talented. Vocally, I don't think he's anything good at all. I think it's a half-assed Alice in Chains-like album that Alice in Chains does way better than Zakk Wylde. And it didn't do anything for me. I'll share my score here in a bit, but Biv, you're more the Zakk Wylde fan. There are my thoughts. What are yours?
Well, just like you, I went back because it had been a little bit. I did go back and listen to Book of Shadows, and I, kind of made mental notes on, exactly how it was laid out and what the tempo was like and so on and so forth. And with the first Book of Shadows, the tempo was varied. There were even though it was very acoustic, there were some keyboard elements. There were some harmonica.
Good point. You're right.
There was different styles throughout. No two tracks were similar to each other. And if you want evidence of that, just listen to the first two tracks, Between Heaven and Hell and Sold My Soul. Totally different. And that's how the album is throughout. And it kept me entertained as a Zakk Wylde fan. Now, having said that, I've been looking forward to this one since I heard it was coming out. So anytime you're going to make a sequel, it has a lot to live up to if the first one is something that you highly prize, like I do with Book of Shadows. So when I put this on, and just like you, Autumn Changes, the first track is, again, it might as well be Pearl Jam. But from that point forward, other than a few tracks, they all sounded the same.
Yeah, they did.
All the way through. The pace wasn't varied. The tempo was the same throughout. It was, verse, chorus, and then he shreds, on an electric guitar over a quiet acoustic background. I didn't care for the way it was mixed at all. And other than, Sleeping Dogs, which I do like, and I like Sorrowed Regrets, Yesterday's Tears, and The King. Those are the ones that stood out for me. Outside of that, the other